We are fully prepared to take further measures to protect our people and our facilities. These are the direct words from U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, the top dog, the top general of the Department of Defense. Now, why such strong words? What is happening? Well, in the country of Iraq, as we know, the US military has either been receiving attacks or conducting retaliation attacks of their own. But it looks like we have now officially entered a new phase of warfare, not only in the country of Iraq, but the entire Middle East. We literally have a commander of an entire Iranian-backed militant group requesting entering a new phase for all Iranian-backed militias in the Middle East. We'll get to that in a second. But first, you already know the drill. Leave your comments and opinions down below, like the video, and most of all, turn on your dang notifications. You guys keep missing a lot of my videos, and YouTube doesn't show most of you my videos anyway. So let us take back control of our own algorithm. Turn on your notifications and interact with the video, please. Okay, so what exactly is going on? You have Central Command, who is in charge of the Middle East, or CENTCOM, who is essentially conducting attacks everywhere throughout the Middle East, from Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. Now, I might as well just update you guys. The most recent attack at the time of making this video happened on January 24th. At approximately 2:30 a.m., U.S. Central Command forces conducted strikes against two Houthi anti-ship missiles that were aimed into the southern Red Sea and were prepared to launch. Now, I am convinced at this point that Central Command's Twitter or any of their social medias are literally just copy and pasting what the U.S. military did like a day before, or 2 days rather, because what keeps happening is it seems that the U.S. military is taking out two missiles at a time within Yemen. This seems to be the most recent string of events for Central Command. But as far as what's going on in the country of Iraq, this really seems to be where real combat is happening, where the US military is boots on the ground and is prepared to start fighting the enemy one-on-one if need be. What's really different about the country of Iraq, unlike in Yemen, again, the US military is fully boots on the ground, and not only that, the country of Iran, since they border Iraq, they have way more influence on their forces to send more logistics, to send more money, and again, that influence is provoking Iranian-backed militia groups to start attacking the US military where they can. This is a very rare moment in history where Iran seems to have the upper hand on the US military. Just go ahead and look back through the last several months how much the US military has been attacked day in and day out, where now we are starting to see the US military get a little more aggressive in their stance, especially in the country of Iraq. Now, just to bring you up to speed, at the time of making this video, on January 21st of 2024, there was a rather successful attack on a US military base where soldiers had received injuries, essentially TBI, traumatic brain injury. So the US military decided a couple days later that they are going to retaliate and go directly after Iranian-backed militia compounds. The strategy is a lot different for the US military in Iraq. They're not going after the railgun systems or a truck here and there. They're actually going after personnel who belong either directly to Iran or at least Iranian-backed militias. And when you compare this to how the US military is operating down in Yemen, where it looks like the US military, again, has even admitted to this, they are specifically only going after the logistical aspects or itemized aspects of the Houthis, who are Iranian-backed, by the way. You can categorize all these groups together. They just act different throughout the region since they have different mission sets. But again, we're pointing out the fact that the US military in Iraq goes after direct commanders and personnel. Down in Yemen, the US military goes after rail systems, or quote-unquote ballistic missiles, if you will. And there is a massive reason for this. As far as Yemen is concerned, the US military does not want to attack anyone over the sovereign nation of Yemen, and they don't want to hit the wrong target, considering Yemen is a massive humanitarian disaster right now. Whereas in Iraq, the US military is way more confident in their ways, and they are a-okay with going after who they need to go after, even if it's smack dab in the middle of Baghdad, which has actually happened recently. And so, due to the this retaliation from the US military, we now have a massive key leader, or commander if you will, who is now invoking the entirety of Iranian-backed militias to enter a new phase. Abu al-Alawala, the leader of the Iranian-backed militia Kataib Saeed al-Shuda, which I'm going to refer to them now as KSS, has called for the Islamic resistance, including Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis in Yemen to begin their next phase of operations against Israel and U.S. forces in the region. Again, this is due to a retaliation on actual facilities belonging to Iranian-backed militias. Now, when we say Iranian-backed militias, I think this gets a little confusing for most, but it literally just means that Iran controls these militias, every aspect of them, how they operate, the money they receive, and the influence they get. How much more aggressive are they allowed to be is based off of whether or not Iran will allow for it. Further evidence we have for this is the fact that all of a sudden we see the Houthis being very bold and able and just going directly after US ships or civilian ships. We now have confirmation that this is because Iran is actually boots on the ground within Yemen. And when you look at all of the groups collectively, everyone, to include the big country of Iran, everyone is way more aggressive. So now all of a sudden, entering this new phase, we can only speculate that this means further aggression. Again, the fact that the country of Iran was a-okay with attacking Pakistani territory and Iraqi territory and Syrian territory and telling no one means that they are highly confident and they feel that momentum is in their favor. But again, now we have an actual Iranian-backed militia commander who is saying, everyone, we are going to enter this new phase, including you, Iran. This also does give us a little insight how all of these groups seem to have their own autonomy to them, that although they are backed by Iran, these commanders might feel a little privileged or at least a-okay with telling Iran, join us in this fight. But ultimately speaking, and when you do a little bit of an investigation, these guys rely heavily on funding and tactics straight from Iran. Now, a very quick side note, I just found this really interesting, is that the country of New Zealand has decided to send a 6-member team of defense officials and experts to the Middle East to assist the international coalition known as Operation Prosperity Garden, which is attempting to protect the transit of commercial shipping through the Red Sea. So look, New Zealand is sending 6 team members to the Middle East. All is good to go. New Zealand has saved the Middle East. But look, all joking aside, again, I think it goes to show that more and more countries are starting to get a little interested on what's going on in the Middle East. I've always been extremely cautious to point out the fact that the Middle East might be the new stomping grounds for like World War III. A lot of YouTubers or people love to sensationalize this idea of World War III. I don't think we're heading into this direction, but you have to understand the country of Yemen is in like one of the best strategic positions to cut off world trade in the Middle East. You have straits pinched off by Iran, and we already know Iran is totally a-okay with seizing vessels. And the Houthis themselves have already been able to divert a lot of ships in the other opposite direction to, instead of going up the Red Sea, they're going to go all the way around and go into the Mediterranean. Something else that's also invoking this new phase of warfare for Iranian-backed militias is the fact that Israel is getting way more aggressive towards Hezbollah over in Syria and northern Lebanon. Israel themselves have also targeted actual Iranian military members, leaders, if you will, in Syria, targeting high-value commanders. Now, one of the biggest issues is that the US military sort of finds themselves now changing what their actual task and purpose is in the Middle East. Are they there to stabilize or are they there to destabilize? As far as Israel is concerned, I don't think they care either way if the entire world hates them. They're going to do what they want to do. But as long as the United States is backing Israel in the Middle East, I think Israel feels rather confident in going to a war with Hamas or continuing their war and also going after targets in Syria that belong directly to Iran. Iran knows that they have a very short time span until the United States or Israel wants to fully invoke their full force in the Middle East. Right now, Iran is playing this really weird game of cat and mouse where militant members in the groups of like 2 or 10 are launching some rockets to the United States and running away. Sometimes they get caught, sometimes they don't. But again, they're getting more and more comfortable with being in the open. And I've talked about this before, and again, this is very, very important. The US military is under threat of being kicked out of the country of Iraq. This is because the Prime Minister of Iraq has had enough of their crap, if you will. I'm not anti-US military. I was in the US Army. I'm just trying to let you guys know that the Prime Minister of Iraq is literally done. He wants them out because the Prime Minister of Iraq knows that as long as the war in Israel continues, Iran is going to continue using their militant members to strike US bases. And because of this, the US military ultimately has the right to defend themselves, and if Lloyd Austin, the top general, is saying we are willing to kick it up a notch, this means the country of Iraq is going to become another playground for warfare, just like what is happening down in Yemen. And so the Prime Minister, it looks like he's trying to look out for his own country and for his own people and his own government, but at the end of the day, the Pentagon is not acknowledging or saying they know about any of this. The US military is still in Iraq, and they don't know about getting kicked out. They know about none of this. They are here to defend themselves, and they are here to protect Iraq from IS. So the mission is getting very great, because the US military, again, is in Iraq to defend against IS, but are they allowed to defend themselves against Iranian-backed militias? According to the United States, yes. According to Iraq, maybe, kind of, but you can't be striking in Baghdad and other highly populated areas. Now, I want to be very careful in speculation on what exactly the new phase is for warfare. One thing I do find interesting is that ever since October 7th, the use of the word phase or phases has been a really popular or pop word when it comes to military tactics in the Middle East. Made popular by Israel, where they are entering a new phase of warfare, and the new phase of going into northern Gaza, and our new phase in southern Gaza. I do find it rather interesting now that the verbiage being used by Iranian-backed militias has strayed over to the word, we are entering a new phase. Whereas the US military as well, they're in a phase of stabilization. But again, I ask the question, or beg the question, all of these airstrikes and all these retaliation strikes, I don't know how much of stabilization this is creating, other than protecting the world economy from getting attacked from random Houthi strikes. I am on the side of the US military. They need to contain the Houthis in Yemen, and I also stand by the US military members in Iraq. They are there to protect Iraq from IS, and they do have the right to defend themselves. But as always, Iran has found a way to exploit the US military in Iraq, and they have found a way to make the US military, or delegitimize the US military in Iraq, showing the world, hey, they are performing combat operations, they are going after us, and they're going to cause another regional war. So we shall see what happens, considering all of these militant groups are willing to be so public nowadays, where they're not hiding in the shadows. Like, they're literally saying, yes, we have ships coming to us with munitions, and Iran is backing us, and Iran, not only are they backing us, they are side by side with us, fighting with us. It looks like entering this new phase will most likely be an escalation of force or more attacks. Again, the fact that the big country of Iran was so okay with launching public attacks over Pakistan, Iraq, and Syria, it goes to show that they probably have already entered this new phase. They've just now made it more public. These guys want to take out the US military in Israel, but the first step by far is go after the US military. Once the US military is out of Iraq, or once the US military is totally occupied with all of these militant groups, Israel is in big trouble because they are heavily relying on the US military presence to keep countries away from attacking Israel. So that's where we're at today. I'm sure I'll be making a video very soon of the US military has taken out 2 more Houthi targets, and the US military has been attacked in Iraq. Prepare for this to be a headline for the next few weeks and possible months, because this is only getting worse real quick.